Hello history lovers and welcome back to the channel. In the last episode we explored Katherine of Aragon's life as Queen of England. If you haven't seen it, be sure to go check it out. We are carrying on from 1529, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and let's continue Katherine's story. On the 21st of June 1529 was Katherine's moment. She threw everything on the line. And although she didn't win the war on her divorce, this battle at Blackfriars was definitely her win. Both she and the king were called to Blackfriars for an examination of the validity of their marriage. Henry claiming that Katherine must have slept with his brother Arthur, otherwise why would God be mad at him, and Katherine maintaining that she was a virgin untouched when she became Henry's wife. The court was mainly filled with reformers or those in the ever-growing Boleyn faction, so Katherine knew that the court wasn't in her favour, as Henry wanted to marry Anne. Katherine knelt before her husband and begged him to stop the divorce proceedings, but he refused. She countered, saying that she would appeal to Rome. "I must humbly require you, in the way of charity and for the love of God, who is the just judge, to spare me the extremity of this new court, until I may be advised that way and order my friends in Spain will advise me to taken. And if ye will not extend to me such impartial favour, your pleasure then be fulfilled, and to God I commit my cause." The crowd that saw Katherine travel to Blackfriars cheered, and she received a loud applause. What is so groundbreaking about Blackfriars is the woman who never puts a toe wrong, who is conservative, pious, elegant, and the epitome of a true queen, ignores the formality of the court and what is expected of her to make this desperate plea to her husband. And even more shockingly is the fact that Henry allows her to do so. Leniency I don't think he would have shown to any of his other wives. George Cavendish records, "Sir, I beseech you, for all the loves that have been between us, and for the love of God, let me have justice and right. Take of me some pity and compassion, for I am a poor woman, and a strange born out of your dominion. I have here no assured friend, and much less indifferent counsel. I flee to you as the head of justice within this realm. Alas, sir, where have I offended you? Or what occasion have you of displeasure that you intend to put me from you? I take God and all the world to witness that I have been to you a true, humble, and obedient wife, ever conformable to your will and pleasure. I have been pleased and contented with all the things wherein you had delight and dalliance. I never grudged a word or countenance, or showed a spark of discontent. I loved all those whom ye loved, only for your sake, whether I had cause or no, and whether they were my friends or enemies. This 20 years and more I have been your true wife, and by me ye have had divers children, though it have pleased God to call them out of this world, which have been no fault of me. And when ye had me at first, I take God to be my judge, I was a true maid, without touch of man, and whether it be true or no, I put it to your conscience. If there be any just cause by the law that you can allege against me, either of dishonesty or any other impediment to put me from you, I am well content to depart, to my shame and dishonour. If there be none, I must lowly beseech you, let me remain in my former estate and receive justice at your princely hands." Henry said nothing. He stared past his wife. When she had finished, the Queen curtsied and left, ignoring calls for her return, and she was met with the same cheers and applause of support from onlookers that she received when she entered Blackfriars. The court ordered her to appear again, but she refused. She had said her piece and appealed to Rome. After Katherine left, Henry declared she had been as true, as obedient, as comfortable a wife as I could in my fantasy wish or desire. He acknowledged that he had been lucky to receive such a marvellous queen. As God is my witness, no fault in Catherine moved me. He then reminded the court that all of his legitimate sons had died incontinent after they were born. He believed that he had been punished by God. Henry then made it clear that he had brought these proceedings not because he disliked Catherine or her age, but because he felt that God was angry with him. He then said that Catherine, with whom I could be well content to continue during my life, if our marriage might stand within God's law. Evidence that Henry was happy in his marriage to Catherine, and makes me wonder, if she had provided an heir, would they have ever got divorced? Let me know in the comment section down below. In March 1530, Pope Clement VII forbid Henry VIII from contracting a marriage before a decision was made from the divorce proceedings, and then in the September, the Pope, desperate, suggested that Henry had 2 wives, as being a bigamist would be less scandalous than having an annulment. Henry's sister Margaret had been given an annulment, but this annulment would suggest that God was wrong, and that's why the Pope was so against this divorce. Emperor Charles V had offered an imperial invasion on Catherine's behalf to end her troubles through the 1530s, and Catherine continually refused due to her loyalty to her husband, and wanted nothing to do with the plan. Wolsey tried and failed to fix his reputation in 1529, but was stripped of his post as Chancellor, all of his properties were seized, and he was replaced by Sir Thomas More. Wolsey is accused of treason and ordered to the Tower of London, but he would die on the journey there on the 29th of November 1530 from ill health. The death of Thomas Wolsey made it very clear that the Pope was not going to grant an annulment. The king was saddened by the news of Wolsey's death. "I wish he had lived," he remarked. In March 1531, the Princess Mary fell seriously ill, most likely caused from the anxiety of her parents' pending divorce and uncertainty for her future. She hadn't kept food down for 8 days. Catherine, being the caring mother that she is, wanted to go see her only child. Henry agreed that she could go to Mary, but if she did, she should stop there. Catherine now faced a choice: go see her ill daughter who needed her, but risk her illegitimacy, or stay with her husband and fight for her daughter's future and place in the line of succession. I mean, it was a painful decision, but Catherine chose to stay by her husband's side, and no doubt she was praying for her daughter's recovery. By the 24th of March 1531, Mary was still ill and showed no sign of recovery. Henry, finally showing some concern about his daughter's condition,
"Don't make me come up there and be a parent! First time for everything! Ho ho ho!"
and having felt guilty about depriving his daughter of her mother, he arranged for Mary to be brought by litter to Richmond Palace, where Catherine would join her. Mother and daughter were reunited, and by April, Mary was well again. Catherine returned to court and left her daughter in the capable hands of her friend Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. Over the next few weeks, Henry continued to press Catherine about withdrawing her appeal to Rome about the annulment, but stubborn Catherine claimed, "I am his true wife." Frustrated by Catherine's lack of cooperation, he moved the court from Windsor to Woodstock early without telling the Princess Mary, Catherine, and her attendants. Henry had left a messenger who informed the Queen that she had a month to vacate the castle. Henry and Catherine would never see each other again. Catherine told the messenger to convey a message to the king. She was sad he had not said goodbye. The king, hearing her message, fell into a violent rage, crying, "Tell the Queen I do not want any of her goodbyes and have no wish to afford her consolation. I do not care whether she asks after my health or not. Let her stop it and mind her own business. I want no more of her messages." At Christmas that year, Catherine sent Henry a gold cup. She and Henry always exchanged gifts, even the past few years, when things had been rough. Much to her surprise, he sent it back, and commanded her not to send him such gifts. Catherine saw her daughter for the very last time in January 1532, when Mary visited her mother at Enfield. Neither Mary or Catherine knew this would be the very last time that they would see each other. Henry kept them separate, as he feared together they might intrigue with the emperor against him, and keeping them apart was a good way to punish Catherine for her obstinacy. In 1532, the Act in Restraint of Appeals was passed. This act meant that Catherine could no longer appeal her divorce to the Pope and Rome. It had to be the English Parliament. In doing so, Henry had hoped he could offer Catherine a large settlement and she would go quietly into a convent, but she declined. Thomas Cromwell's political star was rising, and he led a revolution that called for the English Church to separate from Rome, using the divine right of kings, the belief that the king was God's representative on earth and that Henry had been chosen by God. This would lead to England officially separating from Rome and the Church of England being born. Henry would be the head of the Church of England and wouldn't need to answer to the Pope, and Thomas Cranmer was made the Archbishop of Canterbury. That Christmas, Anne found out she was pregnant with Henry's child. Meanwhile, Catherine spent Christmas practically alone at Enfield, ever under the watchful eye of Thomas Cromwell's spies, who were making sure that she wasn't able to communicate with the Spanish ambassador, Eustace Chapuis. King Henry VIII wed Anne Boleyn in secret at Whitehall Palace on the 25th of January 1533. This marriage wasn't technically legal, as he was still married to Catherine, as the annulment hasn't been complete. Henry banished Catherine to Amt Hill in February 1533, so she was far away from Anne and Henry, who were in London. On the 9th of April 1533, the Dukes of Norfolk and Suffolk informed Catherine that the king had remarried, and that she should refer to herself as the Princess Dowager of Wales. She could keep her property, but, just like 30 years ago, the king would not pay for her servants or household expenses. Catherine was calm at the news, but not abiding. In Henry's mind, Catherine was now his ex-wife. Their marriage was never legal, and that Catherine should refer to herself as the Princess Dowager of Wales, the title she had held while married to his brother Arthur. But stubborn as ever, Catherine kept referring to herself as Queen, much to the annoyance of Henry and his new queen, Anne. Thanks to the combined efforts of Thomas Cromwell and Thomas Cranmer, the king's great matter was finally over. Henry and Catherine's marriage was annulled on the 23rd of May 1533 and denied contact with the Princess Mary. Cranmer declared that Henry's marriage to Anne Boleyn was legal and valid on the 28th of May 1533. Anne Boleyn's coronation pageantry began the next day, with the coronation on the 1st of June at Westminster Abbey. The new queen was not as popular as Catherine, and Anne gave birth to a girl, like Catherine had, on the 7th of September, named Elizabeth, after both of their mothers. Upon Elizabeth's birth, the Princess Mary was declared illegitimate and downgraded to a lady. I imagine Catherine was furious, as she had strived to protect her daughter and her legitimacy, but ultimately, Catherine was powerless to do anything. In December 1533, Catherine, living at Buckden, which was cold and damp, caused her health problems. Henry was going to send her to Fotheringhay, but she locked herself in her chambers as she knew that the conditions were worse. At Christmas, her lady-in-waiting Jane Seymour was moved from her household to that of the new queen, Anne Boleyn. He's only 7 years late, but, better late than never. The Pope finally declared his judgment on Catherine and Henry's marriage on the 23rd of March 1534. He said that the marriage always hath and still doth stand firm and canonical, and the issue proceedings stand deaf, lawful and legitimate. He then ordered Henry to reconnect with Catherine and leave Anne, otherwise he would be excommunicated.
The cheek, the nerve, the gall, the audacity and the gumption.
But the Pope no longer had any authority over English affairs and hadn't done in years, and although Catherine was happy at the news, nothing changed. Catherine was moved again from Fotheringhay to Kimbolton in the May. In 1535, Anne Boleyn was feeling threatened by the existence of Catherine and her daughter Mary, despite the fact she's got the guy, the crown, and Henry is slowly killing his ex-wife by putting her in awful accommodation. Like, is that not enough, Anne? Chill? Anne told Henry that she was visited by God in a dream, and that it would be impossible for her to conceive a child while Catherine and Mary lived. Now, at this point, Anne had conceived several babies, but Elizabeth was the only child she was able to carry to term, and as a result, she could feel that her position was fragile. The ironic thing is, though, that by getting rid of Catherine, Anne would actually be losing her safety net. Not that she could see that. Henry, however, didn't rise to Anne's bait. This is also the year that Henry starts to execute Catholic heretics, so Catholics who objected to the Church of England. The most infamous was the execution of Henry's friend Sir Thomas More, and Henry also had his Catholic teacher, Cardinal John Fisher, beheaded for disagreeing with his plans for the Church of England. He also put his head on a spike and showed disrespect by leaving the headless body naked for a day. Although I don't have any evidence of Catherine's reaction, I don't think it's much of a leap to say she would have been horrified and maybe even see Henry as a monster. Catherine was super religious and has been called pious on more than one occasion. So, like, in my head, it would have played out like the scene between Padme and Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. You know, where Padme is like, I don't know you anymore. Anakin, you're breaking my heart.
You're going down a path I can't follow.
Because of Obi-Wan.
Because of what you've done, what you plan to do.
I'm just imagining the same with like Catherine looking at Henry and being like, whoa, this guy's turned into a proper monster. Anyway, I digress. Anne was pregnant again in November 1535, and so she made another attempt to get rid of Catherine. And it worked just as well as the first time. Anne feared for her and her daughter Elizabeth's safety, and although Henry didn't buy his wife's words, she didn't need him to, as Catherine fell dangerously ill. Years of living in cold and damp castles had taken its toll on Catherine's health. It briefly looked like Catherine might recover in early December, so Anne tried for a third time, third time's the charm, to have Henry execute Catherine and Mary, but Henry knew that Catherine's health meant that she didn't have long left, so he did nothing. On the 30th of December 1535, it was very clear that Catherine did not have long left. The Spanish ambassador, Chapuis, informed the king of her condition. Henry's response was cold. When she is gone, the emperor will have no further excuses for interfering in English affairs. Chapuis was shocked at his callousness, retorted, "The death of the Queen will be of no advantage. His Imperial Majesty will never abandon her while she lives." To which Henry shrugged and gave Chapuis permission to go visit her, which he did. The Lady Mary also wanted to visit her dying mother at Kimbolton Castle, but Henry refused. Chapuis had not seen Catherine in 5 years, and noted that she was so wasted that she could neither stand nor sit up in bed. Catherine's former lady-in-waiting and friend, Maria de Salinas, forced her way into Catherine's chamber, and Catherine was thrilled to see her friends. Chapuis would leave Catherine on the 4th of January 1536 in the hands of Lady Willoughby, but before he left, Chapuis saw Catherine's doctor. Chapuis knew how important deathbed confessions were, so he asked the doctor to get Catherine to swear that her and Arthur never consummated their marriage before she died. It's not much, but it's the last favour he could do for his friend and queen. In her final days, Catherine retreated to her chamber and refused to see anyone who would not address her as queen. The night before she died, Catherine wrote a letter to Henry where she declared, "Mine eyes desire you above all things." And in a last stand of defiance, she signed the letter, Catherine, the Queen. Katherine of Aragon, first wife of King Henry VIII and former Queen of England, died on the 7th of January 1536 at the age of 50. We don't know what exactly killed Catherine, but an autopsy revealed that all of her organs were normal, except her heart, which had a black growth on it, and it was black on the inside. Obviously, diagnosing 500 years later isn't always the most accurate thing to do. I mean, look at the amount of illnesses and diseases King Henry VIII apparently had. However, in this case, I think our modern medical knowledge may help. It is thought that Catherine may have died of a malignant tumour. Tudor doctors would not have known this, so for them, the evidence was pointing to poisoning, and as such, her autopsy report was hushed up so they didn't provoke a retaliation from Spain. Anne Boleyn, unsurprisingly, would be blamed, and many believed that she had poisoned her rival. Chapuis informs the king of Catherine's death, and he said, "God be praised that we are free from all suspicion of war." And Anne declared, "Now I am indeed queen." And if that wasn't enough, 2 days later they held a court ball to celebrate England's liberation from the threat of war, and the royal couple wore yellow. Now, this can be interpreted as two ways. One, it's a celebration that Catherine is dead and won't bother them anymore, and they are wearing yellow as it is a joyous colour. Or two, they are actually celebrating being free from the threat of war and wore yellow because this is the royal colour of mourning in Spain. I'll let you decide what you believe. Catherine was to be buried as the Dowager Princess of Wales, not Queen of England. Despite this, Henry made her funeral as extravagant as he could. Again, is it because he is happy that she is dead, or a showcase of love to the woman who had stood by his side for decades? Catherine's funeral took place on the 29th of January 1536. Henry wore black, and Anne wore yellow. Anne then complained that everybody kept talking about the dead Catherine and not her. Catherine was buried in a grave marked Dowager Princess of Wales at the Peterborough Abbey, now Peterborough Cathedral. When Catherine died, much of Europe hailed her as a hero of the Catholic faith, much like how her parents had been the Catholic kings. In her will, Catherine left her daughter the collar of gold which I brought out of Spain and her furs. Her last request to Henry was for her gowns to be used to make church garments. And, being the cold-hearted man that he is, Henry didn't reuse her gowns nor pass the items on to their daughter. The only justice Catherine would receive was about 400 years later, when Queen Mary of Teck ordered a symbol of queenship be hung above Catherine's resting place. And she has two banners, one bearing the royal arms of Spain, and the other the royal arms of England. And that is the life of Katherine of Aragon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share it with a friend, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. But until then, have a wonderful day.